Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, I am happy to be joined by Robert Wolfe. He is the author of a new book, which I'm going to put on my glasses to get the title of here because I have it right here. It's called Not a Real Enemy, and it has got a Nautilus Book Award, a National Indie Excellence Award, a Living Now Book Award, and a Reader's Favorite Book Award for 2023. Obviously, everything to do with Israel has been in the news because of the October 7th attack. We've had multiple people on that subject as well. And people who listen all the time will know that just a few weeks ago, we're recording this on April the 2nd, but a few months ago by the time you hear this, we had Ronnie Robbins on, and Mr. Wolfe shares a publisher with her. And so it's interesting to hear another aspect of this story. But the book is a biography about his father's amazing story, living as a Jewish man in Hungary, when Nazis and then later the communists seized power. And he ended up in a labor camp. His parents were ended up in Auschwitz. It's a terrible, terrible story. And so, but it's good for us to know and keep talking about it and keep having these conversations because that's how we make sure that we never forget. So, welcome, Robert, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thanks for having me, Cameron. Much appreciated. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yes. So, why don't you tell us a little bit? Why don't we start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your book?
Okay. Well, you say a terrible story, and it's really tragic about my dad's parents, of course.
Of
The
course,
grandparents I
yeah.
never met, who was a dentist, and they were good. They gave freebies and pro bono work to the less fortunate, real died at 50. And my mom's grandfather, a rabbi, also perished at Auschwitz. And one of the miracles in the book is how my dad found out about what happened to his parents months later. But it's a miracle that from an eyewitness that he found out what their whereabouts
Of
and their
course.
destiny. That said, happy ending. My dad ended up in Detroit. Mom and dad raised me in suburban Detroit. He became an OBGYN after redoing his residency in Boston with a Harvard affiliate, which is amazing, the Beth Israel Hospital, which I'm also a doctor, and I couldn't get into the Harvard hospitals in any specialty, but we could talk about that too. Anyway, miraculously, he gets his residency done, moves to Detroit, and lived happily ever after, delivered about 10,000 babies in the Detroit area, which is semi-redemption. It doesn't bring back 6 million Jewish people. It doesn't bring back the millions that were killed in World War II and the countless that were tortured and persecuted and killed by the communists. However, it is some redemption, bringing 10,000 lives into the world after everything he'd been through. Jovial and jolly, no signs of PTSD. You would never know everything that my mom and dad went through, especially my dad. That said, I was raised in a nice household. I was privileged. I was an intelligent kid, I guess. I owe that to my parents. If you don't have a good family, you don't have good parents, you've got nothing. I say that all the time. So high school in suburban Detroit. I went to Tufts University for undergrad. Lucky me. University of Michigan Medical School. Became a doctor, and I practiced radiology. I just retired after 35 years of in the field. The last 19 part-time, and 44 years all in when you include college, med school, internship. So when I say 44 years, it's a lot of sweat. I mean, night call and weekends and angio and thousands of images read. So I guess I've helped the world in that sense, but of course we're compensated for it. Now what I'm doing is it's almost pro bono work itself. It's hard to describe, but it's important work. Anyway, did my residency in radiology at Brown, neuroradiology fellowship at Yale. Now I'm 30 years old, and my indentured servitude is finally over, so I get some work. I was married for quite a while, and I lived half my life in New England, half my life in Michigan, and I'm now here in Southern Florida for 6 years. Besides history and being an author and a Holocaust educator, I've got a lot of interests: sports, music. I'm a foodie. I'm into fitness, nutrition, golf, travel, education, investing. So I've got a lot of pick a topic to talk about. Sometimes I can extend the conversation even.
Oh, I figured you were a scratch golfer or something crazy like that.
Nah, not that good. But I had 3 birdies yesterday, miraculously. I've never done that before, 3 birdies in the same round. So
Oh, very, very
that's
nice.
just 100-foot putt, 200-foot putts, and it was unbelievable. What a day.
Well, why don't we start with what inspired you to do a biography on your dad?
Okay. Well, it was really self-motivating. A little history about the book. My mom and dad, he wrote his autobiography in the 70s. It went from paper and pencil to typewriter to computer. They wrote the stories as though they'd happened the previous day. And we're going back to the end of World War I all the way to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956, after which they escaped, my dad's fourth escape. And the stories were so amazing. The miracles, 20 miracles in this book, four escapes, like I said. And finally, well, my dad passed in 1997, unfortunately, and my mom in 2016. And then a historian friend handed me the books now on a disc. And she hands me the disc, and she says, you've really got to read this. You got to look at this. Didn't think much of it at the time. Took a year to take care of mom's affairs. Then I retired for a year. And then a friend of mine, a radiologist, we've been friends for a long time, from Michigan. He was short radiologist, so he asked me to come back to work and a couple days a week. So I did. It was ultrasound and X-ray. I just finished from that job 6 years later, which is how long this project has been. But it did bring me to the book. And so on the left screen, as a radiologist, we've got the patient queue. On the right screen, we've got the images that we're reading. So in between cases, the left screen was my dad's autobiography, and the right screen was me turning it into a biography. So now we're talking 2018. We were going to self-publish. I queried agents and publishers, a big goose egg. And then I tried some beta readers, and one of them, who's an author in Rhode Island, Lisa Tenner, a friend of mine now. She's been great in helping me with this journey. She hooks me up with my co-author, Janice Harper. So this is now 2019. She takes a year to redo the book and turns it into something really special. Stories that are parallel, converging stories, letters to and from home, conversation, really, and all based on what my dad's story was. So we call it a biography. You can call it a novel. You can call it nonfiction. It's an adventure, and it's a history book, and also the trials and tribulations of my dad's family. So it's kind of a hybrid book, but basically a biography about my dad. The stories were just so amazing that I couldn't leave it on a disc. I couldn't leave it on a computer. I wanted to share it with the world. And here we are. Right? We picked up Amsterdam Publishers. I think it was 2021. And within a year, they published the book. And I'm very grateful to Lisbeth, who's a fantastic publisher, and many, many great books coming out of Amsterdam Publishers. And I was very privileged and honored to have that kind of author, co-author, and publisher. And I'm a big team guy, so a big team that helped me. The website, the YouTube channel, socials. And believe me, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be here talking about this book. So very
No,
great.
no. I mean, yes, I'm always, I was telling you beforehand, I had a great conversation with a wonderful business guy on the show named Elijah Sass, who's also Hungarian and whose father survived the Holocaust and everything. And I always tell this story because most people don't know. I was always weirdly cognizant of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution because, and no one knows this, there's a memorial for it in Denver, Colorado.
Really.
So, yes, so it was Spear Boulevard turns into Cherry Creek. There's this gorgeous granite stone memorial memorializing the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. I have no idea why this ended up in Denver. As far as I know, there's not a large Hungarian population sort of thing, but someone got the land and the money and the idea and all this sort of thing. And so I used to drive by it all the time, sort of thing. And years go by, and I finally sit down and Google and read about it and all this sort of thing. And I was kind of I have 2 degrees in political science, so I kind of knew about it, but I actually to read into the details. So give us a taste of because it was resistance against communism. The communists had come in, and people were like, no, protest it, and the communists did a bloody repression. Your father had four escapes. Walk us through a couple of them. How did he manage to escape these terrible things?
Okay. Well, his first two escapes were under Nazi Hungary. They were both from forced labor camps. One of them was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the Carpathian Mountains, and they thought it was a death march, he and his friend Frank. So after my dad was treated for a infected foot and got back to the line, they escaped. They had a few days to make the decision to make the move, and they did right at dusk, and managed and successfully escaped. And you feel that story. I mean, that's part of this book because you feel like you not only empathize with the character, you feel like you're in their place. You actually can feel the fear. You can feel the cold. You can hear the noises, the dogs barking. A third guy escaped and they caught him. So that could have been my dad or his friend Frank.
Right.
And, so that was a really relaxed. And that's the one part of the book that when I read the manuscript 30 years ago that I remembered. The rest of it I didn't really pick up on until I reread it, in 2018. 2019. Anyway, that's his second one in Budapest, it was they got corralled into what they call the dog pound, and they managed to. It's right in front of Nazi headquarters in Budapest, and good split second timing, the hand of God, a little bit of luck, and a lot of courage and a lot of smarts. The way they managed that escape. So, flash forward to now it's communist Hungary. His third escape was when he was a medical student, and he got all the way to the Austrian border. He claimed, ironically, that he was supposed to go fix X-ray equipment in a nearby hospital. And he challenged the armed Russian soldier. He was arguing with the guy. He says, "Go ahead, call the administrator, see how much trouble you're gonna get." And he bluffed his way through, got through, but for the fear of reprisal and the fear of getting arrested, he turned around and went back to the medical his home in Budapest, and he was on call the next night, and nobody knew he was gone. So a little bit of fear. He managed to escape. He could have kept going, but and then finally,
Yeah.
after the Hungarian Revolution in '56, he escaped with my mom from the country permanently, and that was a very harrowing tale as well. So, and like you said, not a lot of people know about the Hungarian Revolution. 3,000 people died, 2 week
Yeah.
war, countless refugees, countless injured, and my mom and dad had to double down. My dad was now a trauma surgeon as well as an OBGYN, and my mom was so he's working 24/7 for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and my mom ran the blood bank. She was a medical student at the time, so
Oh,
after
wow.
that war and the communist, the hardliners clamping down, they said enough is enough. Better late than never, because a lot of people had already left the country, and they were really
Right.
closing the borders heavily at that point. If it's so great to live here, why do you have to close the borders? We can ask Iran and North Korea and China and all these other countries. If
Right.
it's so great to live here, why won't you let me out? So it's
Yes, my book publisher always jokes about the walls kept to keep people in the workers' paradise. That's
that's a good way of saying it. Mr.
yeah, yeah.
Gorbachev, tear down that wall. So I'm with you.
Yes, yes. So, having never, written a book before, coming from medical, all this type of thing, what was the process like, especially once you worked with your second co-author? What was that like?
Well, she was great. I mean, she's a real team player. She's an author herself. Mostly anthropology is one of her expertise. She wrote about Madagascar, and she also wrote a book about getting your PhD. So she's a
Hmm.
fellow Michigander. She was great to work with, great book coach, and she helped me with my book presentation, with writing that up, and that's very well received. The proposal package, the strategy with the proposal package, who to vet. We vetted out. We only queried 12, 15 agents and publishers. She really narrowed it down, and actually, literally, we got Amsterdam Publishers bottom of the ninth, shoestring catch, and I'm very grateful because we were just ready to self-publish. It's a
Right,
lot of
yeah.
work. It's not just writing it down and handing it into somebody, to an editor and then a publisher and collecting royalties. It's far from that. If you're going to do well with a book, you could have the world's greatest book, but if nobody knows about it, it's not gonna you're not gonna sell copies. So, with all of that, the book's out, and slowly but surely, I'm on socials all over the place, trying to tell people about the book. A lot of podcasts, like with you. Thank you very much. TV and radio interviews. I hired a PR girl for 13 months, and a lot of help on social media as well. And if you can afford it, I would say it's worth spending some money on, a good quality book cover, which actually was a really good deal for me. If a good book coach, a good editor, and if you can afford it, somebody that can help you market, either with a PR person, and I know they're expensive, or just help with social media, just getting facile with the nuances of social media. And I've got a lot of talks and presentations through, believe it or not, I mean, LinkedIn is the one I expect the most, and I have had a lot of great contacts, but Facebook and Meta, it's so, and
Yeah.
even Instagram, you never know. So you just want to tell a lot of people about your story, and you want to keep it to at a potential audience that might be interested in what you're talking about too. So a lot of details to it, and it's different, like you said, from practicing medicine. I've got to go out and chase people to fight anti-Semitism and say, "Hey, this is a great book. Hey, this." But when you're a radiologist, you walk into the office or hospital every day, and you've got your cases waiting for you to read. So it's
Well,
a
yes, the sick
different
does
business.
come to you in that case, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, so when it comes to, the fight against anti-Semitism, I will have to say, as someone, this show doesn't just do books, we also do political commentary. And one of the things that I had noted and written about, especially on Twitter, is especially during the election, I said, I've never seen this level of anti-Semitism in this country. I mean, we've had synagogue shootings, which are absolutely terrible, like Tree of Life in Pennsylvania and all this sort of thing. That and it's kind of always been there in the background. But for people just openly, blatantly posting anti-Semitic memes, saying absolutely terrible things about Jewish people, all this sort of thing, I've never seen it this bad. How does that feel for you? What are you doing as an activist?
Well, after October 7th, my slippery slope went from this to this, as you know, because that's what I'm.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm an activist or if you want to call me a renegade or a crusader or whatever word you want to use. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm charged to share my dad's story and with it, the theme of anti-Semitism, the theme of how the perils of anti. It's more than just we hear from Auschwitz or even the death marches, which nobody knew about it in Hungary and in other places of Europe. We all knew about the death marches in the Pacific of
Right.
course. But in the end, it's how crappy humans treat other humans. And it hasn't changed much over time. I mean, we're talking 60, 80, 100 years ago. And my dad wrote the story as though he knew that I would do this. He knew when, and don't you hate it when your parents are right, but he knew that I was going to share this. And they also apparently knew that it'd be a recurring problem, that the anti-Semitism would be a recurring theme. So with all of that, all that ignorance and all that crappy news that we hear on social media, it does have its bad points too, of course. And people should take the time to actually watch legitimate news, read newspapers, read books, and really realize what is going on in the world. And different people find different ways to torture each other, kill each other, persecute, rob from each other. Now it's social media fugazis. Back then it was, well, I rescued you, so you give me your watch. Whatever the case may be. Um, it was just it's the fight the motivation is the fight itself, the battle in trying to fight the anti-Semitism. So I do it in my own way, and I can't do it alone, as you know. And of course, African Americans had their issues in the 60s, and then we had the 9/11, and so there's Islamophobia, and then there was the coronavirus, and so there's the hatred against the Asians, and now October 7th. And, we're tired of being scapegoats, and I'm tired of anybody being a scapegoat. And people should do something more productive with their time rather than it's okay to protest and state your opinion, but to call for the death of people, to call for the persecution of a country, our country, Israel, Hungary, back in the day, they never got a break, even now. So it's really self-motivating. I don't know how people think. I'm not going to convert the less than 1% that are going to hate people forever. You know who they are. We talked about the white coats and the supremacists and the
Yeah, yeah.
Hamas and
You
all of
give up
those.
on them. Yeah, yeah.
It's always going to be, what is it? Morgan Freeman, always going to be the same people. In Driving Miss Daisy, he says it's
Hmm.
always going to be the same people. But for the 99% plus of those of us that are into sustenance of life, family, enjoying whatever precious time we have, making a little bit of money, having a home, taking a vacation, with just things like being with family. For most of us, we're not like that. And part of my job is just to recruit that thought, and so that we keep it that way, so that we can surround and envelop the problem, whether it's being arrested, whether it's educating these people, and maybe it won't convert them. It could actually encourage them for some of these real sociopathic and psychopathic people, but we try, and by doing that, synagogue talks and and church talks. I've done museums. I've had the honor of being at the Holocaust Museum in D.C. twice, two-day book signings. I could do that every day. I could, one guy comes in and says there's no anti-Semitism in Australia. The next guy comes in and says it's a big problem here. So,
Hmm.
but educating the kids and their families about genocide and talking about the perils of anti-Semitism or any other type of racism. To me, it's all about the same now. The distinction blends itself into a very blurry picture. But it's
No, and
clear.
when my book, What the Hell is Going On, which is now out of print, I wrote kind of my seminal essay on racism, and I intentionally talked about African Americans last because I wanted to prove a point that other groups suffer from America's racial system too. The Chinese have had their share. The Japanese had internment camps. We literally locked them away, sort of thing. Until the Supreme Court said you can't do that, like sort of thing. And also, the kind of anti-Semitism. I mean, Harvard in the 19th century asked for pictures of potential students to look at their noses to make sure they didn't invite too many Jews. I mean, this is kind of the under bubbling sort of thing. There's still, certain co-op buildings in New York that do not accept Jews, sort of thing. Back in the day, country clubs, that's kind of gone away now, but like back in the 70s, country clubs wouldn't accept Jews, sort of thing. That used to be a thing.
No doubt,
Um,
it's coming back. I mean, I'm hearing it's
yeah,
coming back, and sometimes it's a country that won't admit people from other countries. I'm hearing in Canada,
yeah,
especially. But yeah, we talk about during the rise of the hatred in the 30s and early 40s, how no Jews or dogs were signs that were on some of these clubs, hotels, and whatever. So
right.
you know your history because you nailed it with the Japanese internment. That sounds very similar. 5% of forced laborers, like my dad, survived the war, and
Yeah.
my dad had a quota for getting into med school. There was only 10% of Jewish people maximum in the classroom, so
Yeah.
he endured that too. And it took forever for him to get into medical school just because he was Jewish. He was kicked
Of
off his swim
course.
team because he was Jewish. His dad lost a job as a dentist in a federal agency because he was Jewish. It was really, really, really sad. And hopefully that's what we're fighting against. The guns, our military and police still are protecting us. The guns aren't pointed at me and you, and
Yeah.
that's the difference between. Maybe it's a slim difference, and I hope that never changes. But it certainly wasn't the case in the rise of fascism, anti-Semitism in Hungary and elsewhere, of course, Europe, even in the United
Yes.
States. There's many famous Americans that were anti-Semitic, and even now there are, and that's the sad thing. The African Americans and the LGBTQs that talk against Jewish people, you guys, it's like, dude, you were next. You don't, and Muslims
It
too.
doesn't
Muslims
take, yeah,
that
it doesn't take long to get down to us, sort of thing. Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, and I'm sorry for that. I mean, I can't apologize for the people in the '60s and the Civil War, but you still can.
No, I
It's
mean, I think it has come into a bit of a difficult focus right now because you have, everything that's going on in Gaza post October 7th, and not everybody is necessarily agreeing, not necessarily that Israel shouldn't defend itself, but how it's sort of being done. And it has reared its ugly head in the last couple years. Absolutely.
it's so
And
sad.
I have been frustrated because I have very nuanced opinions on that conflict, and if people want to hear those, go watch the News Hour because I talk about it. But I think for me, the really sad part is I feel like it's going to open season for anti-Semitism, and that's unacceptable. Like, and no one should ever be discriminated against for their ethnicity. We may not like the actions of certain governments, but you cannot criticize people simply for who they are. That's a very fast slope to very bad things happening, and it doesn't take very long. And I think people would be shocked at how one narrative gets started against a certain group of people, and pretty soon really horrible behavior gets excused. And that's what happened in Germany, which is the most open country in Europe for Jewish people in the 19th and the 20th century, which is why there were so many living there, sort of thing. It didn't take long. 6 years. I mean, that's a breath, in a century. I mean, from 33 to 39, that's all it took, to go from the most open and accepting to Auschwitz. 6 years, sort of thing. I mean,
Yeah, no, I mean,
absolutely terrible.
we talk
Absolutely
about the
terrible.
late 19th century, how Jews were really accepted throughout Europe and encouraged to come. And there was no Israel at the time, of course, till
Right.
1948. But come the end of World War One, Admiral Horthy, the Red Terror, the White Terror, the
Yeah.
Nazis, the Arrow Cross, the Jews always thought, "How am I screwed?" No matter who was in charge, their
Right.
thinking was it's always they had to talk themselves out of it, like my dad's parents. They had to move a few times. They converted to Christianity once, converted back. So they went through a lot just to survive. I mean, never mind get a job or open up a dental practice. So, and like
Yeah.
you said, no, and the communists were no better either. Of course, short of corralling them into town squares and throwing them on trains under false pretenses. And but to persecution, Jewish weddings illegal, somebody being hauled away. The gentleman who did my parents' Jewish wedding at his home, who sponsored it, KGB was there, and they hauled him away when my parents were on their honeymoon. And he was in prison for like 13 months and tortured. And he was the chief of surgery at a Budapest hospital. Came back a broken man. They banished him to some rural clinic. And fortunately, he got out eventually and went to Sweden, where he practiced surgery for many years. His daughter, who just passed last year, my cousin, She just died. She's the last survivor from the book, just passed away in Jerusalem soon after the October 7th attacks. But I don't, she was in a coma, so I don't, fortunately for her, she probably never knew about that war, thank God, and the attacks. So, but anyway, yeah, so the communists not so great either. So, and now here we are in a democratic society in England and the Netherlands, where my publisher is, in Canada, Australia, and of course in the Middle East in some countries. The encouraging thing is there's some Arab Peninsula nations that are really trying to make ties with Israel, and I don't know if Syria is ever going to, but it was nice to see some change because of angry citizens, angry civilians, and even in Gaza lately, I'm hearing this week that there's some protests against Hamas by these kids in Gaza. So.
There was
Uh,
a young man, I covered it on the news hour. So we're recording this on April 2nd. So on the April 1st news hour, I covered a story about a young man who was killed protesting against Hamas. And
Yep.
it was funny because someone on Twitter had said, "Oh, the media never covers this." And I said, "I'll do you one better. I'll cover it top story tonight." And I did right after the monologue. I went right into it. And I left his picture on screen for all to be kind of like, this is good. Because no one wants Hamas around, okay? No one will be sad to see them go away. And Hezbollah too. I mean, and they get all their money from drugs in South America. They're all of them absolutely terrible. I think it's wonderful to see the everyday Palestinian being like, no, you've brought you've brought the roof down on all of our heads, sort of
Exactly.
thing. Get out of here. I mean, I think that's an encouraging sign. And the thing I love about it is it breaks the narratives that every Palestinian is automatically signing on to the Hamas agenda, which I've known from people I've talked with has never been true. But it's nice to finally demonstrate that, and then on social media where people can see it and understand it. And it's if there was any conflict in the world that I wish we could put a stop to, it would be that one. I have a degree in international relations. I can tell you policy papers, UN studies, all this type of thing about how that might be accomplished. But just from a human level, we're talking about a slice of land the size of New Jersey.
Yes, we
Um,
are.
and it's like Newark declaring war on Trenton, sort of thing. It would be very nice that all the people there who care about peace and want to live in a decent and open and democratic society would be able to do so in that space. And I hope one day somehow by hook or by crook we manage to get there and overcome the divisions of the past.
No, I
It seems
agree.
impossible in the darkest of the night, but that's right before the dawn.
Well, I agree, and that's kind of what I'm doing here, saying, this is war is war and peace is peace, and we don't. Finally, Hungary was at peace with its surrounding countries after two wars, after three, I don't, countless wars. I mean, World War One, World War Two, Hungarian Revolution, war with Romania, and so same thing here. The 6 Day War, the Yom Kippur War, all the conflict in '48 when Israel was named a independent state,
Yeah.
and from my memory, invited people that lived in Israel to stay, Jewish and Muslim. So, and some rejected it, and some didn't. And then, of course, later on, not much later, but the property was challenged. There were battles. I think Iran is
Well,
a big problem. I think these people are just so.
Iran is a huge
No,
problem,
North
yeah.
Korea is another one. I mean, not at the immediate future, but they're saber rattling, and now they're helping the Russians in Ukraine, which is the other really crappy war. I call
Yeah.
it the Hungarian Revolution on steroids because the first couple of weeks, a lot of people were comparing that war to the Hungarian Revolution, so it came up.
Right.
But now it's just I can't imagine my parents' lives had they not left and had the war gone on in Hungary for that long. So they were repressed early, and it wasn't great the result, but at least more people didn't die. Now we're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and it's so senseless. So the parallels are just it's overwhelming. It's just amazing. Different people, different nature, different venue, but it's still the song remains the same, and it's really sad. At least Lebanon is kind of coming into it. Egypt, United Arab Emirates, I guess, slowly but surely, they're just trying to. But it's so hard to tame a hostile dog for sure. It's just really hard.
No, no, it is incredibly difficult. And I think it's really spectacular that your parents were able to, escape and rebuild their life here in this country. And yeah, that's no easy thing. There's a new language to learn, and new cultural norms to understand, and you've just, you've been through this terrible traumatic thing, and then you've got to, start you've done all of that, and then you get on a boat or a plane one day, you arrive in a new place, and you've immediately got to start over, sort of thing. You've even hardly got a moment to process what's just happened, and then, right into it. And that's
Amen. It sounds like you've read the book. If you haven't, I think you would enjoy it. I mean, you'll laugh, you'll cry. You can't put it down. But then the Auschwitz story, I had to put it down. That was part of the process. Reading about my grandparents, it was so saddening that I had to walk away from what I was doing for a week or so. So, and
yeah.
you're right. I mean, having to learn a new language, having to redo a residency, taking elementary school and high school English, just to. But my parents were brilliant, though. I mean, they spoke English better than most Americans I know, and they read a lot, and they were Holocaust educators and educators of history in general. They weren't real political. My mom used to say with her Hungarian accent, I would not belong to the Nazi party, and I would not belong to the Communist Party, so I will not belong to a party here in the United States. We vote, and I love the we vote for the best candidate. And she was right about that. So they never bought in, they never got entrapped into joining, especially the Communist Party. So not real political, but well-rounded people, museums, theater, travel, opera. They read constantly, and I'm grateful for that because they like to teach about these horrors. And I guess I got the zap. I got Superman's kryptonite. I'm doing the same thing. It's my charge, I guess.
No, I mean, but I think it's so important because, there's not many survivors left. Most have, it's been a long time, and most that are still around were children. All the adults have passed on. And so it's important for, people to take up that mantle.
Well said.
As
Not yeah,
yes,
no,
yeah,
nobody's talking about North Korea or Vietnam anymore, let alone the Civil War or the War of 1812, the Revolutionary War. We're not really talking about it. So I hope with the Holocaust, since so many innocent people died, and we're talking about 50 million all in for World War II, but
right.
Hungarians and more were coming. I mean, if we'd lost the war, we all know that Europe would have been devastated, and probably Asia as well. So no, the message is clear, and we keep going. And so it's great that you're involved with this and that you're doing so many interviews with authors, and especially
Yes.
authors that are, we could be talking about a comedy book or something. And I've got something in the back of my
No, I've been
I have a couple of
inspired.
things back, but
No, I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. twice. And I was very, very inspired by it. There are many moments from that and many smells from that that I will absolutely never forget. And in college for our Holocaust memorial, I was a litany reader one year, so I spent a half hour reading names. So I've been involved. I'm not a Jewish at all, just an ally. It's, fellow from the fellow persecuted minorities department. We all have to show up for each other. So
I couldn't say
it's yeah,
just yeah. My mom couldn't say it better herself, and she actually did say that many times. And it brings us to like MLK and the Jewish people. So, which brings another point: why aren't people following Moses and MLK and Gandhi and Jesus? I'm not Christian, but I think Jesus was a great man. I think what he did was so meaningful. All of those leaders, and unfortunately, some of their messages got released too late. They were assassinated or murdered, or just died too young. Or in Moses' case, he wasn't allowed to go to the Holy Land, and that was his whole freedom in the Holy Land, and that was his whole thing. But what sacrifices these people have made? So instead of watching TikTok and crazy news and false news, the people should read up on some of these people and with the importance of their messages. So I couldn't say that better myself. What you just said.
yeah, no, thank you. Well, this is the part of the show where we do plugs. So why don't you tell us where we can keep up with you online, where we can buy the books so we can all go read up?
May I show you the copy of the book?
Absolutely.
So I know it's good. There's a little reflection here. I can't tell.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
So it's, excuse me, most important part, and I lose my voice. Not a real enemy. The true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom. 4 awards. I got to say I don't know what to do with that. I'm not the type to pat myself on the back. I'm appreciative of the people that are in the know, that read a lot, that they know the quality of the work and the importance of the work, and I owe my team for that. And all of that said, if it doesn't help me in my fight against anti-Semitism, if it doesn't help us do what we want to do, it doesn't mean anything either. So you can find, if you Google Robert J. Wolf, MD, or if you Google Not a Real Enemy, you'll find me, you'll find the book. My website is not robertjwolfmd.com. You can find me across the board on socials. I'm going to sound hip by saying Meta and X, used to be formerly Facebook and Twitter.
Yep.
I use LinkedIn a lot. I like LinkedIn very much. Instagram and recently on Blue Sky and TikTok. So I've got a YouTube channel, Not a Real Enemy by Robert Wolf. I've actually got a Facebook author page too. So, and I'm on other platforms that I've never even seen with some help. But anyway, those are the biggies. Socials, the main socials: Facebook, Meta, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then just Google Not a Real Enemy. What else did it was going to? And please help me fight anti-Semitism. I mean, yeah, invite me for a book presentation. It could be Zoom, it could be live, book signing with the whole thing. Nice question and answer. Whatever. I do. I don't say no to anything. So call Congress, call your Senate. Make sure what are we doing about the fight against racism and anti-Semitism? What are the legals doing? What are the police doing? What is the mayor, the governor, that kind of thing? It all helps. It adds up. And my book, 10% of my author proceeds are going to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. So that helps with the ongoing education, and that's in perpetuity. That's in my trust. The kids and grandkids honor all that, and a few of them been to the Holocaust Museum as well. And a couple months later, I was there doing the signing. So I don't want to say too much. Robert J. Wolf, MD.
No, that's
Thank
perfect.
you. Thank you so much for having me. And please read the book and share. Write a review. Anything.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
God bless you, kid, and thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.